Assalamu alaikum ji. Welcome back to another episode of Kahe, Kazi. My guest today was Areej Jaffrani, psychologist, adolescent and child specialist, play therapist, and business owner. We get to talking about the taboos around psychology, around psychotherapy, around what it is to have a business here as a woman in Pakistan as a woman, and about the women empowerment narrative in general. Enjoy. Three, two, one. Areej Jaffrani. How you doing, Areej?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. Wonderful. Alhamdulillah. We were speaking about my marketing pitch.
Yeah.
And how I should work on it, especially when I'm going to text a lady that I don't know. Telling them...
Or a lady that you do know.
Or a lady that I do know because they don't know me that well.
Yeah.
Saying phase 8 mein basement mein aa jao recording is not...
Yeah, and probably not a good idea.
We'll work on it. We'll make it better.
Yeah.
Bal, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for coming. क्योंकि हमारी गुफ्तगू हुई थी last time, so we were A-levels, next year, right?
Yeah.
उसके बाद हमारी गुफ्तगू हुई थी कोई 3-4 साल पहले, and you said you wanted to do something in psychology.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is because you were always a brilliant student.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's kind.
Better than the average at least, but much better than me. You know, it was like आप कोई lucrative काम करती है वो, and that was my line of not saying कि we don't need what we're going to talk about right now, what you're doing, but maybe it's not the most lucrative thing.
I mean, I think you can make anything lucrative if you want to make it. I mean, especially in Pakistan, where there's no accountability for the line of work that I'm in. And if I want to make tons of money out of this, I could.
Oh, shady. But you don't want to, right? Yeah,
no, the fact of the matter is that, yes, I didn't think about at that time, which was probably not a good idea. I think as a woman, especially if you want to be financially independent, you do want to think about whether this is going to keep you afloat, and if it's a sustainable line of work. I didn't think about whether or not it was going to be lucrative.
Let's just talk. Let's just give them a brief of what you were talking about back then, and alhamdulillah where you are right now.
Yeah, so I'm a psychologist. I'm a child and adolescent psychologist.
Baqaida. Put a stamp on it. Have a paper.
Well, I mean, in Pakistan, if you have a master's, you can call yourself a psychologist.
And you have a master's?
I have a master's,
wow,
yeah.
Mashallah, that's impressive.
Thank you.
Just having a master's.
And I've done a couple of trainings since then. I specialize in play therapy, and then I've gone on to do sand play therapy training as well. So I work primarily with children and adolescents. Kids who have social, emotional difficulties, trauma history, depression, anxiety, stuff like that. So I work with those kind of kids.
And this was your plan from the get-go, and
so I started my bachelor's with like we were talking about, we did economics together. We were in the same class.
Yes. Zinat Faruqi.
Not Zinat Faruqi. We had Sir Nadeem Ghani.
You never had Zinat Faruqi?
No, I didn't.
Oh, depressing.
And then I had Sir Ali Anwarzada.
Who's not bad.
He's pretty good, actually.
I've
never got a chance to study from
Mrs. Faruqi.
Mrs. Faruqi, heard lots of good things about her, though. So the plan initially was to do a bachelor's in economics, which I did. I majored in economics, and then I added psychology as a minor. And then I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And so I was like, अच्छा, इसको थोड़ा और explore करते हैं. So I added it as a major as well. So I did a double major in econ and psych.
Fine.
Then I was like, okay, I want to learn a little bit more. So I added a minor and did behavioral science. It was basically just adding more psych courses on and calling it a minor in behavioral sciences.
Okay.
So I did that. Then I don't know if I started off with wanting to study economics, and then I just started exploring psychology, and then I really liked it, and I did this specific course during my undergrad, which was on child and adolescent psychopathology.
Wow, right.
Yeah, and and the professor was really, really good.
कौन सी university?
McGill University.
Ouch. सिर्फ हाँ जी बहुत अच्छा प्रोफेसर था.
No, she was, because you have all these professors, like with econ, I was just done with it in the first year and I still stuck with it, but the professors they did not know how to teach. They
And
were
they were
just
very
like
dry,
and just
Droning
droning on
on.
and on
Yeah,
and on.
yes.
But this professor really, really like, it just, when you know that someone's really passionate about something when you're talking
It's
to them.
also so heavy that what she's teaching. No?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. And I've always been surrounded by kids. I have a huge family.
Mashallah.
I'm a Meeman, so, I have a huge family.
Sure.
I have loads and loads of kids around me while I was growing up.
Yeah.
So it was something that it sparked my interest quite a bit. So I was like, I did an internship while I was in my undergrad with an adolescent who had a learning difficulty, and I was like their peer tutor, and I would go in twice in a week, and I would teach them and have them work on different goals and stuff. So that's when I decided that I wanted to do I wanted to go into therapy. Then I went on to do my master's in developmental psychology and clinical practice.
And by this time, you're zoning into what you want to do exactly.
Exactly. So by that time, I was like, "Acha, this is what I want to do. I want to do therapy." And so psychology is a very vast field. It is.
100%.
And honestly, McGill में इतनी अच्छी career counseling कुछ थी नहीं. So I didn't.
पाकिस्तान के मुताबिक तो वैसे भी नहीं होती ना कि आपको अच्छा
वहाँ जाना है.
जहाँ पे लोग मानते ही नहीं हैं.
Exactly. So it was a struggle trying to figure out what route to take and how to get there. And because psychology, every country has their own kind of rules and regulations about how you can work and what you need, what requirements you need to work as a therapist or as a psychologist or whatever. Like, I can't call myself a psychologist in, for example, the UK because I don't have a doctorate. But I can call myself a psychological associate in Canada because I have a master's. But in specific parts of Canada, I can call myself that. But in specific parts of Canada, I can't.
So you did it in Montreal?
I did my bachelor's in Montreal.
And master's in?
I did my master's from UK. Yeah.
Impressive. Okay. So and all of this is happening, and now absolute optimism at its peak. You're going because I know you're not like paise banaungi. You're like this is something I want to do. Calls to me.
So I was saying that I didn't have that mindset that paise banane, but I think I should have had some idea that is this something that's going to make me financially independent.
Well, you don't want to have a taboo around making money, na?
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to, especially as a woman. You live in a society that really discriminates against women, and it looks down upon women who are financially independent. And I think as a woman, there's a lot of like shame around money or wanting to earn your own money, or at least मेरे perspective से या मेरा जो personal opinion रहा है कि a woman wanting financial independence is a little tabooed or there's a lot of shame.
क्या करेगी? Absolutely.
Exactly, right? Yes. So I feel like because knowing the person that I am, I should have thought a little bit about that. I feel. So if there's anyone who's listening, who's thinking about going into psych, just have that little bit of framework that maybe it's not as lucrative as any other field.
Having said that, there's also the problem of the moral compass that you have and a lot of people don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is something we must get into.
Yeah. So like I was saying, there's no accountability in Pakistan. There's no regulating body. There's no ethical framework that you need to really, or if you don't practice according to that ethical framework, there's anybody who's going to really catch you. There are so many therapists and psychologists out there who are just doing really shady work. वही वाला basement में आके recording करते हैं वाला.
यार वो तो गलती हो गई ना बंदे से क्या हो गया?
No, but no, I'm just saying that there are a lot of people who are not ethically practicing, and you need to have that moral compass too.
Because you'll destroy someone.
Exactly.
You'll ruin them.
It's a very it's a sensitive area to work in, especially with working with children, and they're especially a vulnerable population.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you definitely need to. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to make money out of the field that you're in or out of your passion, but you do need to have a moral compass to know what you're doing this for the right reasons as well. Because in when you're practicing as a therapist, you need to continue to professionally develop, right? You need to it's like, it's like medicine.
Absolutely,
where
yes,
you're a
yes,
doctor,
yes,
you need to continuously keep getting more training. So I did my master's 3 years ago now. I
Oh,
graduated
mashallah.
3 years ago, and since then I've done multiple trainings, right? So
Yeah.
I've had to reinvest a lot of the money that I was earning. And then on top of that, you need to get supervision, at least until a certain point where you can practice independently, where you don't need supervision very regularly.
So your argument, I suppose, is that you're keeping yourself honest, but there's really no imperative on you. कि आप कोई और बोल रहे हो कि भाई, are you keeping up with your trainings?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
are you up to date?
No.
There's nothing like
There's
that.
nothing like that in Pakistan, though, right? So, I mean, because of my moral compass,
Yes,
and even though
alhamdulillah,
it probably sounds really like, khud matlab miyan muh miyan vittu ban ke, like,
ठीक है,
I'm
थोड़ा
talking
बनना
about
मुनासिब है,
this.
अल्लाह रहम करे.
But I am registered with certain organizations, associations abroad. So I know कि अगर कोई, if my clients were ever to go to those organizations, I still have some accountability. Even though it's not in Pakistan, I still have accountability with those associations, for
Mashallah,
example,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, you just need to you need to be accountable for yourself in a country like Pakistan when you're in this field specifically.
ठीक है. And so fast forward to today now. How's your business going? Because it is.
Yeah.
It's on now.
It's on now.
Inshallah,
So
inshallah.
my business is small right now because I have 2 jobs.
All
So
right.
I have my own private clinic that I do 2 days a week.
All right.
I've got I've got a small number of clients.
Which are all kids.
Which are all kids.
Babies.
Yeah. And I also work at a school. I co-founded their mental health department.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that's something that I'm super proud
Yeah,
of.
mashallah,
Yeah, because that's the need for today.
That's absolutely
yeah,
the need.
Yeah.
I think when we graduated from, this was 2011. 2011 के end में 2012 के beginning में, I used to work for the CAS की special needs department.
Oh, I feel like I may know the person that you used to work with who actually set up the special needs department at CAS. Aisha Jamal.
Yeah.
She gave me my first job when I moved back to Pakistan.
She's done brilliant work
Yeah,
for this
for
field.
this
And
field.
आप सोचो ना, that's 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
Or more, give or take, 9 or 8 or 10
Yeah.
years, 8 to 9 years, whatever. She was my boss. And जैसे आपके मेरा भी ये था कि I was simply supposed to chaperone is a bad word. Just assist some of the kids there. And yeah, Areej, the kind of intelligence these kids had, it would break my. Me sitting here right now, I would bawl my eyes out. लेकिन उस ज़माने में full मर्द था, कोई मसला ही नहीं था, रोना
Rona is not, accepted.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not. मतलब, the only emotion I can feel is anger because I'm a man.
Yeah.
But they were so intelligent, and they would. Some of them would enjoy my company, right? They'd be like, "Oh, let's go out and play." Some of them had hyperactivity and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. But some of them, they would hate me.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand it. Like, and sure, you learn something in A-level psychology. Are they
Yeah.
associating me with something? What's
Yeah.
going on? But they were like, no. And then some of them would actually talk to me in private. They're like, when you come, क्योंकि क्या होता था normal class में, and I suppose this was still in their development phases, तभी वो उस वक्त इतना अच्छा नहीं था. Normal classroom में उनको बैठा देते थे, and then I would come and sit with them, just monitor their work, talk to the teacher, talk to the kid, are you having difficulty or whatever else not. But I suppose they didn't know how to do it any other way, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was a very fairly new thing for a school to set up a department like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Miss Aisha, she faced so many problems coming from people who were supposed to be educationists, right? कि भाई,
because they have like a very traditional mindset, right? There was no there was no understanding of special needs. There was no understanding of children coming from a place of trauma, for example. There was no understanding of children being depressed or being anxious. And and
एक थप्पड़
all
लगाओ
these,
सही हो जाएगा.
exactly, this whole idea of traditional disciplining, which is still used today, by the way, like a
100%,
lot
हाँ.
of schools still use that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely. तो वो बच्चे जो होते थे ना, वो मुझे बोलते थे कि when you come sit with us, that means there's something wrong
There's
with us.
something wrong with us.
Think about मेरे अभी भी I still get goosebumps.
Yeah.
Think about an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old saying that to you. Like they had that kind of intelligence.
Yeah.
कि यार, you know, like I
There's
will be perceived
yeah,
differently.
Yeah.
That was just powerful. But well, yeah. So I worked there, and that was the first one. And now you've opened this department.
Yeah. So it's a mental health department. It's called the emotional well-being department
That's
or the
good, yes,
team.
yes.
So we have like counselors or special educationists at different campuses, and the department kind of provides support. At different campuses they provide, and at different levels they provide different types of support. So I started off with the school as a play therapist, as their in-house play therapist at one of their campuses.
Achha, two questions right off the bat. Ek to you said child psychology and then adolescent. What is the cutoff for the adolescent?
18
okay.
years old.
And
yeah.
what's play therapy?
So play therapy is, so children can't really say, okay, oh, I'm feeling this or I'm feeling that. And their natural means of communication is play.
All right.
So they've developed a model of therapy which uses their natural means of communication, which is play,
Sahi.
to really learn what children are trying to express.
ठीक है.
So through play, you learn what a child is going through, what it is, what might be their traumas, what might be their difficulties, and you help the child process all of that while using playful either activities or just very kind of child-led play. And the therapy is happening in the relationship between you as a therapist and the child as a client. And the child is, you've got lots of different toys, and there's like a certain criteria for the toys you need to have. Like it's got, you need to have aggressive toys, and you need to have nurturing toys, and you've got like a bunch of toys in there that the child then comes and plays with, and then the child will naturally, just once you have enough rapport with them, once they feel safe enough with you, they will show what's really gone on with them or is going on with them through the play that they're going to show you.
Sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and it's really, really cool. There's very few play therapists in Pakistan, all of Pakistan. And yeah, so I mean, and then within play therapy, there's lots of different models as well, right? So there's sand play therapy that you can use with adults as well, which is you've got sand trays, you've got a bunch of objects, and then you put them in the sand tray, and that's how you show what's really going on for you and what your unconscious is like and what's really your internal workings of your mind. You're just putting them out onto a sand tray and you're processing that in a safe relationship with. So play therapy started off with being for kids, but it's really, really expanded into for all ages and for all types of difficulties as well.
I suppose जो मुझे समझ आ रहा है, please correct me. मुझे जो समझ आया, I suppose the potency or the power of play therapy would come from the limited means of communication. Because with language, right?
Yes, that's exactly it.
I could put up 1,000 walls with my words. Semantics.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
With play therapy, it's going to be raw.
Exactly, and it's going to be sometimes it's very unconscious as well, which is what sand play specifically taps into. And so, how you're saying, like, it's limited to your traditional talk therapy is limited to verbal use, and so basically, there are two different parts of the brain. There's one part of the brain that language actually has access to, right? And that's what the part of the brain that you're tapping into when you're doing traditional talk therapy, psychotherapy kind of stuff, right? But there's another part of the brain, the right brain, that language does not necessarily have access to. And a lot of our trauma, especially pre-verbal trauma, for example, trauma that we went through while we were kids, before we had language, or even after we had acquired language, a lot of our trauma, and there's a lot of research out there, and there's some brilliant trauma therapists and trauma psychologists who've done research on this, of how the the trauma actually resides in the right part of the brain where you don't have access to language. It resides in memories, in image memories. It resides in your right part of the brain in images, and it actually is stored in your body. So your cells,
Psychosomatic, all those
yeah,
things.
your cells remember the trauma. Your brain remembers the trauma. Your, the sensory experiences you went while you were going through trauma, and you might not necessarily have access to that through the language. So play actually helps integrate the right and the left sides of the brain and really allows you as a therapist to, tap into that part of the brain that's not accessible to language, which is why play therapy is super powerful and which is why it works well with adults as well.
Yeah.
Because there are adults who are going to be like, I don't want to talk about this. So and often we have, sometimes we have like, oh, I know that there's something wrong, but I just can't quite put my finger on it, or I can't actually quite describe what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And play therapy does that for you.
Well, for the longest time, I think till I was at least 25, I couldn't talk about anything.
Yeah.
I make jokes. I suppose comedy is my release. So not that I'm very good at jokes. I still make them. But I suppose that's one of my release. I just started becoming all right with talking about it. For the longest time, all their lives, in fact, some people through social pressures or parental messages or whatever they've internalized in apne bachpan mein, they're so wound up.
Yeah.
They wound up so tight.
Yeah.
How's the response like?
At the school?
Or at the school generally with people? Because
so of course, I started training to be a I started my undergrad in 2011.
All right, mashallah.
Right? That's when we graduated. And when I started studying psych, I was terrified that I would never end up finding a job as a psychologist or as a therapist when I moved back to Pakistan, because there was no awareness.
No.
There was awareness, but there wasn't really a lot of there's still so much stigma around it back then. Abhi bhi hai stigma, but there's people are a lot more open to the idea. There's, there's some organizations that have done brilliant work at spreading awareness and fighting stigma.
You want to shout those out?
Yeah, Taskeen is one. Saya Health, which is doing employee wellness stuff. Taskeen does a lot of just awareness campaigns on TV, and they do it in different languages. So there's just some brilliant work that's happening in Pakistan to raise awareness. So back then I was terrified and even as early as when I graduated in 2017, when I was moving back, I was terrified that I wasn't going to find a job. And I graduated in June, July mein you're graduating. 6 months before I was supposed to move back, I was frantically jo mujhe organization Pakistan mein nazar aa jati thi Karachi mein, I would just email them, I'm moving back, can you please give me a job? Because I was terrified, because I was like, when I left Pakistan for my education, I was like, us waqt still these, ideas of jinn chad gaya ya asar ho gaya, and all of this kind of pagal hai, just all that kind of stuff. There's still some of that, but right now there's a lot less of that. So
because people are working on it. Right?
Exactly. So many people are working on it and doing some brilliant work. So now the response is great. I usually in my own private clinic have no space sometimes. I have to refer.
Wait, is that wonderful?
It is wonderful in the sense that now people are, it's wonderful, yes, but on the flip side, no, because now there's so much awareness, but there's not enough resources to actually meet the demand.
So
but
there's also awareness, but no education.
Exactly.
Right? So they'll bring the kid to you. Areej, isko theek kar de.
Exactly. Or fix my child. Fix my child. And that's one thing I often kind of get stuck with working with parents or working with children, because a child is within a system.
Sure. Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Whatever you see that's coming up for a child will be impacted by their environment, by the school that they're going to, by the peers, by their parents. And often when parents bring their children for therapy, they'll be like, fix my child, without really
when do I come back to pick him up? Right.
Without really realizing that they need to do their own work to be able to see the impact that they want in their child. Right.
Absolutely.
So it is wonderful that there's so much awareness that you're running out of people to refer to, and there's so many people wanting to seek therapy, and especially with Corona, there's just been a huge increase in people having to seek out help because of just so many, factors.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, we don't have enough resources. The numbers are horrible when you look at them. When I saw a WHO report, there was like 290 psychiatrists in all of Pakistan, or just hundreds के number पे आपके पास psychologists and psychiatrists हैं, और child and adolescent mental health के लिए तो और भी कम है. So there's just so few people actually able or competent enough or trained enough to provide the support that's needed. So, I mean, it's good. I guess with this kind of awareness, then there are people who will actually start going into these professions too,
Inshallah.
right?
Yeah. What is your personal organization? What is it called?
Lumos Counseling.
And you have that on Instagram as well?
Yes.
I do follow it, yes.
Yeah.
Just wanted to put that out here early. Because sometimes
Yeah.
we usually shout out at the... मतलब जब भी हम करते हैं, लेकिन I want कि वो हो जाए.
That's
We'll
fine.
also try to give you a shout out on Instagram and stuff, so more people get into it. Why do you think that is? Why don't more people go into it? Because matlab, we had a lot of smart people even in our batch in Nixer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I guess there's a number of factors in there. It's
Sure.
not as lucrative as other jobs are.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
There's one factor.
Yeah.
I mean, like I was saying, you can make any job lucrative if you want to,
Sure.
while still holding on to that moral compass. Like
Easy.
you can do so many different things with it.
Yeah.
I think the other is it's a vast field and people just don't know how to go about it because you don't have enough people to provide you that. I didn't have anyone to actually go to and ask them, yeah, this is what my end goal is. How do I get there?
Well, also just
right?
even survey numbers. You're going to do your masters in this
Yeah.
adolescent and child psychology. Who could you go to, or where could you find the numbers? कि किस किस्म के psychologist की ज़रूरत है सबसे ज़्यादा पाकिस्तान में, कराची में ही?
Yeah, I mean,
there's no numbers.
exactly. There's no numbers. There's very, very little research that's out there. So yeah, and again, it's seen as a very woman-centric profession.
It?
Yeah, I mean, how many therapists do you know, and how many of them are men?
I know. Well, you're a psychologist. I can't call you
I
a
mean, therapist,
okay,
psychologist,
okay.
yeah, in the mental health field.
देखिए फर्क होता है, ऐसे नहीं
होता है
ऐसे नहीं
फर्क, but yeah.
I know one, and I know a total of I think 10 therapists.
Exactly,
And
right?
they're all smart people.
Yeah,
but
10
women,
therapists, but one man,
Yeah.
right? And unfortunately, in Pakistan, not a lot of women work. I mean, it's changing now. Obviously, a lot more women are working.
Yeah.
So I guess if it's seen as a woman-centric profession, and the women are the ones who are not actually working, then obviously there's already that gap that's
Yes.
being created,
Yes,
right?
yes,
मैंने
yes.
कभी इतना consciously सोचा नहीं है इसके बारे में कि क्यों इतना बड़ा gap है, but now that I'm thinking about it, maybe perhaps this is also one of the reasons. There's very few men that actually go into this profession. I'm a therapist and I know कुल मिला के दो I think of that I can think of in Pakistan.
Wow.
It's not just a Pakistani thing though, right? मेरे masters में 12 लोग थे हम. Only one of them was a man.
Wow.
Yeah, we were 11 women and one was a man. So all across the world, it's seen as a woman-centric profession.
Well, why do you think that is?
Because it's all about feelings and emotions.
But
and,
men
you
don't
know,
have those.
and
I see.
men don't have those, right?
Why would I ask that question?
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, a Pakistani man as a therapist, do you think that a Pakistani society will see to that very kindly?
No, not at all.
Probably
No,
not,
no,
right?
absolutely
So I
not,
think there's a
yeah.
lot of stigma around
Paglon ke
that.
doctor banoge.
And that's been something that I've been called before, Paglon
by
ke
who?
doctor. People, relatives,
Sometimes,
friends.
exactly.
Oh my God.
Sometimes the most problematic thing isn't what they're saying; it's who's saying it.
Who's saying
Right.
it? Yeah, because you're surrounded by people, you have friends, family,
Yeah.
and then they say some things to you, and you're just like, hold on,
Yeah.
am I really friends with you?
Yeah, am I? Are we blood? Like, what's going on here? You know, sometimes the cutting thing is कि यार एक आपको मैं क्या करूँ? And I don't know, but from what I've found, तो मेरी पढ़ाई जो थी वो ज़्यादा philosophy और writing की तरफ चली गई. So
You also had a book, right?
I did write a book, yes.
Yeah, I
Stories from
remember
Karachi,
that. Yeah, I remember
लेकिन वो
that.
यहाँ पे available नहीं है. लोग बोलते पता नहीं क्या
हाँ,
बोलते.
I asked you where I could buy that, and you
You
were
can't.
like, you can't.
You can't buy it. Sometimes people are like, did you really? I'm like, you just have to take my word for it. Who knows if I did, right? It's वो Canada और Europe वाले side पे available है. पता नहीं क्या. और I'll try and get another one here, inshallah. But हाँ, तो writing and philosophy में I more or less faced the same thing, right? I'm not saying it was justified, right? लेकिन I can understand कि यार when they say यार आप philosophy के साथ क्या करोगे?
Yeah.
ऐसे तो मेरे पास 10 जवाब हैं. But it's not the same as a psychologist. A psychologist की बड़ी सख्त ज़रूरत है.
हाँ,
Philosophy की you can make the argument, but sure, you know.
I mean, I guess it's what you do with it.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely agree. There's a huge need for more psychologists. I think, agar next 5 years, maybe a lot more people go into the field, we still wouldn't have enough people to provide the services that are needed and to meet the demand that there is.
But would you say that they would necessarily have to take, because you took the difficult road, right? There are easier roads to becoming a therapist. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Right?
Yeah.
They would have to take that road.
I mean, yeah. I guess it depends on what you want to do, right?
Sure. Okay. If we just need more therapists.
Or if you just need more therapists, I think it takes about 3 years to become a therapist in Pakistan.
And that's all right? You're okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's you can't be. I think बाहर बहुत ज़्यादा snobbish बन गया है वैसे ये profession. जैसे psychoanalytic psychotherapy है जैसे UK में, for example, it's become a very snobbish kind of like a profession where you have to get therapy for like 2 years. You have to have analysis. I have friends who are in a doctorate for psychotherapy. Like they're training to become child and adolescent psychotherapists, psychoanalytic psychotherapists, and they have to go through 5 times a week analysis every week, 5 times a week. And that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it should be as stringent as that.
Yeah.
Considering the local context,
Sure.
We do need a lot of therapists. So I think there needs to be a balance. We can't obviously be like कि हाँ 1 साल में उनको train करके बस they should just start becoming therapists and that's fine. Yeah, नहीं इस तरीके से भी नहीं हो सकता. You need to create a good balance, and I think the schools that we have, one particular school, I'm not going to take the name because then it's going to be like all because there's a number of schools in Karachi specifically that trains these therapists. But there's one that's really, really good, and yeah, I think if people want to go that route, that's fine too. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Simply because simply because there's such a dearth. I didn't know the numbers were that bad.
Yeah, they're quite bad.
I thought we were getting better, but
I mean, we're probably a little bit better than that last WHO report that I saw, but हम 200 से क्या 400 500 हो गए होंगे या 600 हो गए होंगे. हमारी क्या population है इस वक्त?
थोड़ी ज़्यादा है.
I think the numbers are quite bad.
Yeah, the ratio isn't good.
Yeah. There's like ratios maybe like thousands to 1. Like एक therapist अगर वो 1000 लोगों को देखेगा तो आप
कैसे देखेगा वो
नहीं देख सकता ना, because exactly.
So what then in your practice do you, and I'm obviously going to ask for adolescents as well, what in your practice is the most prominent issue with Pakistani children or Pakistani youth?
Anxiety is a big one.
All right.
Yeah, I think children and adolescents, there's just been an uptick in the number of parents seeking support for their children who have anxiety issues. And that can be different types of anxiety, social anxiety. There's a lot around test anxiety, exam anxiety. Lots of kids going through like panic attacks and stuff like that. And children as young as like 7, 8 years old are feeling, there's been an increase in the levels of anxiety. Then there's other stuff like bullying.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
And I think trauma is probably the biggest.
Yeah.
Because हमारा again local context इस तरीके का है कि people and parents don't realize that what they're doing to their children is quite traumatic.
Absolutely
Yeah,
traumatic,
some of
yeah,
the
yeah.
practices that parents still follow can be physically abusive or emotionally abusive, and then of course there's sexual abuse, which is just a different thing altogether. So I think trauma is the biggest thing, I would say, and then of course within trauma there's when you see trauma is the underlying thing, then there's just so many different things that come out of it: anxiety, depression, self-harm, suicidality, and all of that. And why I would emphasize trauma is like hamara local context again is we live in a very violent country.
Yes.
School shooting. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised after kids saw what happened at APS that they would have anxiety around going to school, for example. We have Karachi mein itself, we have muggings. You sit in a car and you're just like, oh my God, I hope I don't get mugged, and children pick up on all of those things. And there's research that shows that if you live in a geopolitical area which is more rife with violence, then you're more likely to have mental health difficulties.
Yes.
And so, I think one of the biggest is trauma.
Trauma, and then also the history of violence that we have. ये तो एक बड़ा मसला है ना. We're never going to talk about it.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it.
Yeah, and
क्या मतलब है नहीं बात कर सकते यार?
And there's just research that shows that trauma gets passed on from generation to generation. Right? I mean, there's been research that's been done with Holocaust survivors and their children, how their trauma was passed on from them to their children. And it's at a cellular level. So, hamari to history he is rife with violence and trauma, right?
So, when you're saying passed down, you literally mean
genetically you pass it down. Yeah.
But you could have been the best parent to your kid.
I mean, so you're more likely to have mental health difficulties. There's research that shows that. And unless we address that. So I had a really interesting, while I was training for my play therapy training, there was this person who was sharing their experience of how they were training us on basically, how trauma gets passed down from generation to generation. And she was talking about, there's no chance that she's going to see this, but of course, trying to maintain confidentiality, I won't talk about the specifics. But she would say that I would be in this situation, in a specific situation, and I would start having a panic attack in that situation. And I would just not know why. It was that one specific situation that she would start having a panic attack in.
Okay.
Right? And what she realized after doing a little bit of digging was that situation was a very traumatic situation for someone else in their family, which had one of their parents. So an incident had occurred in that specific situation where, so for example, let's say if your parent had been in a motorcycle accident, and every time you sat on a motorcycle or you sat in a car, you started having a panic attack, but you just have no idea when you're having that. And when you do a little bit of digging, you realize, oh, my parent had an accident and now I'm having an impact of this.
That's so
and
serious.
For her, it was such a light bulb moment that this is why I'm having a panic attack, because of something that my parent went through in that specific situation. So it gets passed down from generation to generation, and unless we address it, we have a history of trauma, we have a history of violence in our country. Unless we address it, how can we buffer its impact?
We expected to move on because of the political dimension, or the diplomatic or what have you.
Oh, we're so resilient. Narrative.
Resilient, and also don't talk about it क्योंकि कोई बंदे का नाम नहीं ले लो आप.
वो भी, and don't portray the negative image of Pakistan.
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
Which I'm not, right? I'm not trying to do that.
No, you're just addressing the facts.
But
right.
I'm absolutely for Pakistan, and Pakistan is the kids.
Yeah.
So if we help them, I think we're doing more. तो वही खैर एक आप याद करो बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट हुआ था.
बहुत सारे में किसकी बात कर रहे हो?
अल्लाह रहम करे. जो फेज 8 में हुआ था, they were trying to get that high ranking police person.
Why don't I remember this?
I don't know, but क्योंकि that destroyed CAS completely.
Really?
I used to. आप शायद नहीं थी. आप शायद नहीं थी.
But this was
2012.
Yeah, I wasn't
Right?
here.
So
Yeah.
2012, I was early 2012. I was early 2012. I was
Yeah.
working at CAS, and I was, in fact, it spooks me to this day. Allah Reham
Yeah.
kare. I was arguing with my mom about going into work late.
Okay.
I was like, okay, I'll just call Miss Aisha, and I'll be
Yeah.
like, I don't want to come in today or whatever.
Yeah.
And then what felt like an earthquake and
Wow,
the
why don't I
sky,
remember this?
the sky cracking, yeah,
Wow.
and it destroyed CAS completely. And you know, you think the kids didn't see that? मतलब वो उनसे पहले था, right? उनके time से पहले था.
Yeah.
But you didn't think they saw that?
Of
वही वाली
course
बात
they
है ना
did.
कि
Yeah.
and you'll never talk to them about it. Oh, bad uncles came and they
did something and
no, dude, you gotta process
yeah.
that.
Yeah, you have to, and it's multiple events like that, right? There were
आपको सर्दी लग रही है?
yes.
तो आप बोलो ना यार, बर्दाश्त करने की क्या जरूरत है?
अभी start हुई है.
नहीं नहीं बस ठीक है.
People have been saying weather change हो गया और सर्दियाँ आ गई हैं.
सर्दियाँ तो आ गई हैं.
कहाँ से हीट वेव की वार्निंग थी अभी?
हाँ हीट और साथ साथ आई है और ठंडी हवा तो चल रही है. I don't know.
Anyway, so there's multiple events like that, right? I remember जो Chinese embassy पे attack हुआ था not too long ago. Yeah. And it's a hub of other preschoolers. I think there's a couple of preschools around that area. And kids were in the school while it happened. And, parents were scrambling to get their kids out of school. And it's a sad reality. यार हम निक्सर में थे. Do you remember when there was a call? I can't remember. I probably shouldn't even name them, but there was a threat and to all schools ke we're going to blow you up or something.
Yeah, because you're espousing Western ideals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I remember Nixer mein we were given an offer, I think 2 weeks, so they could prepare it as if it was a prison or something, right? There were barbed wires all around the school.
Yes.
I remember there were a couple of snipers when we finally returned to school. There were a couple of snipers that had placed on the roof.
Yes.
And that's how you're coming to school.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
That isn't, but for us it was like
and I was like, हमारे school में तो देखो snipers भी होते, but it was not normal.
No.
And I remember, and it's such a weird, it's such a specific memory to have though, right?
Yeah.
I remember that Nixer में आपका एक वो they made a passage.
Yes.
That
Made of iron,
really dark passage
Yes.
ke you would enter the gate and then they would shut the door and then you'd have to go across that passage,
Yes.
that dark passage,
Yes.
and then there was another where Zen Bhai would be
Yeah.
and he would then open the gate and you'd have to sign in and all of that.
Yes.
But that was not normal.
That's not normal. But
because if you think about the schools abroad, they just walk in.
यार
Right?
इतनी पार्टी
There's
चल रही
no-
होती है Areej.
there's no-
At the University of Toronto, like no one, I don't think anyone ever asked me for my ID card. I was
Exactly.
very proud.
Yeah.
I'm studying and
Yeah.
इतनी अच्छी फोटो है मेरी. Nothing. Nothing. They're just like, we don't care.
Yeah.
Uncle बैठे हुए हैं, बुढ़े लोग आए हुए हैं. Everyone's just chilling at university because they're public spaces, because they're spaces of knowledge.
Exactly, and people can just walk in and be in those spaces, and yahan pe, and I just think about that, like it was quite a stressful time.
It was stressful, but at the same time, you are never encouraged to speak about that stress or to even acknowledge it.
even acknowledge it.
So I suppose the fracture in our psyche generally becomes कि यार मुझे दोपहर में बिरयानी खानी है या चाइनीज खाना है
Yeah.
और यार अल्लाह करे ये फट नहीं जाए स्कूल. Those are the two things
Yeah, like it's
that are
so
competing.
odd.
They're competing for your
Yeah.
attention. You're just like, एक minute यार, isn't there like a level of escalation? There
Yeah.
isn't. This is Karachi.
Exactly,
This is Pakistan. And yeah.
And it's quite, I mean, I'm sure, think about that scenario and someone who's prone to anxiety anyway. What is that going to do to them? Going to school every day. And at that time, we didn't have any counselors to talk to. We had counselors who were career counselors.
Yeah.
They weren't really,
Get you into Harvard or whatever.
or something. But there was no one to really talk about your anxiety, your fears, your, the trauma that you're going through. There was none of that.
And which is crazy because aap dekho, we had some phenomenal psychology teachers.
Exactly.
For A-levels, right?
For A-levels,
They could have been our counselors.
Yeah, I don't understand why no one ever thought that let's get some counselors in these schools.
और उस पे भी मजे की बात है कि Nick sir वैसे was on the cutting edge of everything else.
Exactly,
You know?
but not, and it still isn't. I
अभी
don't
भी
think
नहीं है.
that they've got
You could introduce it.
counselors.
यहाँ पे एक shameless plug.
Yeah.
You have your banner here.
Yeah.
Allah khair करे.
But most schools in Karachi, or I don't know about rest of Pakistan, but I think most schools in Karachi don't
Still don't.
have psychologists. I mean, they've started to now. There's a couple of schools there's Kiran Foundation who does trauma-sensitive work.
Wow.
Their entire system is trauma-sensitive. Another shout-out to them, because I love the work that they do.
Mashallah,
And yeah, so there are some schools who are doing some brilliant work and who are really, integrating all of mental health knowledge and theory and all of that and providing that support to their students, but most aren't.
So
And-
it's clearly not enough.
No, it's not enough at all. I
No.
don't think so.
Yeah.
Hmm.
अल्लाह खैर करे यार, ये कैसे
Yeah.
होगा फिर, हम कैसे ठीक करेंगे इसको? Because that always occurred to me ना, कि we had very, जैसे Miss Varda थी या Miss Mona थी, these were brilliant. I don't remember the
Yeah.
rest of them, but these were
I think
brilliant.
they were the only two that they were. But I mean, I never took A-level psychology, so
What? I did.
I did A-level sociology.
I did that too.
Yeah, I didn't.
मतलब ऐसे पैसे कमाने के उसमें तो मैंने कोई भी ऐसा सब्जेक्ट नहीं लिया था. इकोनॉमिक्स लिया,
Yeah.
ठीक है ना? उसके अलावा क्या था? लिटरेचर, साइकोलॉजी, सोशियोलॉजी, थिंकिंग स्किल्स.
So yeah.
My parents, my mom and dad incredibly supportive, but the rest of the family just like,
कर क्या रहे हो अपनी जिंदगी के
ठीक है,
साथ?
पैसे वैसे चाहिए नहीं चाहिए, मम्मा, पैसे आ जाएंगे इंशाल्लाह. I still think that, Allah khair करे.
Yeah.
But even the two of them, there could have been something that could have been worked out. कि यार आप also maybe counsel them.
Yeah.
इतने लोग आते भी नहीं उस वक्त, स्टिग्मा इतना था,
हाँ,
सब
अभी भी
मरते.
stigma काफी है वैसे. There's still a lot of stigma with mental health. Like, you were saying कि what's the, going back to what's the response like working in a school, and the private practice में तो आपको parents ही ला रहे होते हैं, so that's a different ball game altogether.
Yeah, and they're coming with
Yeah,
the purpose,
and there's
so it's fine.
yeah, exactly. With the school, it's a different ball game, right? Because you're now you're the one approaching the parents and saying, hey, we think that your child needs support. And some parents are incredibly supportive and incredibly, understanding and
Yeah.
really do want to help their kids. But some parents, because and no fault of their own, right? Because society has created so much stigma around mental health.
Sure.
That they're just like, if anybody finds out my kid is going to a counselor, it's just going to be not good for them.
Yeah,
right?
not good for them,
Yeah,
not good for the
them.
kid, which is
Yeah, and it's
ridiculous.
not-
You're just like-
but that makes no sense, because if your kid doesn't get that support,
yeah.
it's not going to be good for them
Ever.
ever.
Yeah.
You know?
यहाँ पे तो classes
yeah.
भी, classist इतने हैं हम,
Yeah,
कि
exactly.
grammar में पढ़ता है, या ये सारे मसले भी तो है ना यहाँ
Exactly.
पे.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just such a strange world we live in,
Yeah.
especially this country, and yet
Yeah.
you and I have both of our own volition chosen to come back. ऐसे सोचो आप. And so many people do, you know,
Yeah.
because they're like, no, we don't want to live. We want this to be better.
Yeah.
वो-
But it's hard work to make this better.
Yeah,
Trust
yeah.
me.
Absolutely. वो मुझे अभी भी याद है कि it was the PPP government for all of Pakistan. Or Yusuf Raza Gilani was the prime minister then. And someone asked him, someone was like, an international news forum or someone asked them, कि भाई, 51% of Pakistanis say that they would love to leave Pakistan, and he goes,
Yeah.
"Who's stopping them?"
Oh, I remember this.
He's like,
Yeah,
तुमको
who's
किसने
stopping
रोका
them?
है?
Huh.
And I was like, yeah, no, you don't understand, dude. We want to stay. You
Yeah.
know, this is not like we're leaving you. This is like we're saying,
But things are difficult here.
yeah,
I don't think there's anything wrong if somebody wants to leave
No,
and
nothing,
create a
unfortunately.
better life
Yeah.
for themselves, because it's hard, man. It's
Yeah.
hard here.
yeah. Especially if you're a lady.
Yeah, especially if you're a woman.
Yeah.
Like, abhi मैं drive कर आ रही थी,
Yeah.
and I was, constantly checking my rear view mirror, especially Phase 8 area is quite deserted, right?
it is.
You see a motorcycle wala ya a rickshaw wala, and not to be classist here, but it's just so like, आपके दिमाग
Ingrained,
में ingrained, or even not even a rickshaw wala or a motorcycle wala, even if you see a car with a couple of men in there and no woman, you start freaking out
yeah.
as a woman,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly like that.
You know?
Exactly.
I remember, my friend and I would, phase 8 ke paas, we'd go watch the sunset there and we'd park our car and we'd stand there and we would constantly be on alert ke abhi koi idhar udhar se aa na jaye, you know. And there was a time where there was a car that came in and all we could see were men and we freaked out.
Yeah.
Main to gaadi ko start kiya, I was just about to back out.
Yeah.
Back the car, but then I saw that there was a woman, there's an old auntie sitting. I was like, oh, I can relax.
Yeah,
and it's because you feel so unsafe as a woman in this country,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there are times where women have gotten into really unsafe situations, but in these situations where
doing something completely normal, completely mundane,
exactly. And I remember having this conversation with a friend who said, she was moving abroad and she now doesn't live in Pakistan. She's moved, and somebody had asked her, what is something that you're so excited about, to do there when you get there, and she said something as simple as, I'm really excited about walking on the roads.
Man.
And I completely relate to that, because you could walk there without, I mean, obviously you still get catcalled and all of that in other countries, and that's still a reality there. वो भी बहुत कम है.
वो भी, that's considered a bad part of the
exactly
town.
it is, but we're not suggesting that other countries are very safe for women, but yahan bata, you can't even do something as simple as walking on the roads.
When we started importing these narratives of women empowerment, right? We imported them from where we import everything from, the US. And my view has always been that language, that narrative, it does not come close to what you would need for a place like Pakistan or India. It does not come close. वहाँ पे उनके पास बड़े जबरदस्त किस्म की एक चीज है, it's called बुनियादी हकूक and all those things. It's like rights.
तो कुछ है ही नहीं ना.
क्या है?
कुछ भी नहीं.
You know what I mean? Like a person goes through something as horrible, as horrendous as whatever happened on the highway there. And the person comes up
and says, कि आप क्यों drive कर रही थी? And my mind immediately went to, I take the Creek Road often, which is a very sometimes can be a deserted, and I won't lie, there have been multiple times where I've not checked my fuel ka wo. And that could have been very well any of us, and your mind immediately goes to that. Like, you can't do something as basic as, drive on the roads.
You can't make a simple error in judgment ki yaar petrol kam tha.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not gonna lie, since then I've been very, very particular about checking my fuel. Just because, I don't wanna get caught in an unsafe situation. So it's a very unsafe place to be a woman. So I don't, hold it against anyone who wants to.
You can't. But I had a conversation with Saif Jatoi on the podcast, and him and I were in agreement. Dekho, what can we do to solve the problem? The first thing we need to do, as a society, is develop a martial ability. And what that means is that every lady must be trained in combat and weapons training. Right?
Yeah, yes, but that's a very reactionary, don't you think?
It's the only pragmatic solution. देखो, everything else, क्योंकि ये मैं तैयार हूँ उस चीज़ के लिए Instagram पे में ही. You remember? I've forgotten her last name, so I won't mention it. But there was a person with us in Nixa, and she had this conversation. She's like, "No, but that's a very exactly that. That's not solving the problem." I was like, "No, that is actually the only solution that will solve this problem, because everything else you are relying on systems.
That are deeply entrenched.
Misogyny, but are also corrupt. But are also corrupt. तो वो जो काम वैसे करना होता है उनको वैसे भी नहीं कर रहे. You're telling them not only are you supposed to this is your argument कि आप वो भी करो which you're supposed to do, but also be better. नहीं होगा, right? So unfortunately, the only thing that then makes sense is that we take care of our own. We take care of ourselves. और क्या समझ आता है?
Yes, you take care of yourself. That's definitely a But even I mean, thinking from a perspective of a woman,
Yeah.
if I'm in an unsafe situation, I have been in some very unsafe situations as well myself, right? And not even just in Pakistan. I'll tell you, like, I was something as simple as when I was doing my master's in London, I was, on a weekend, it would be my routine that I would go downstairs. There was like a nice bench wahan pe. I could just sit in the sun for a bit and just have my coffee and have my breakfast.
London में sun थोड़ी होता है भाई.
कभी जब होता था exactly, and that was something so nice कि कभी जब धूप आती थी आप वहाँ पे बैठो. And this really, really old man started to basically solicit me for money to come live with him. And this was a very, very old man. I am doing something very, very normal, as something as simple as enjoying breakfast by myself.
In a first world
in
country.
a first world country,
And all those
right? So
things,
I've been in very unsafe situations.
Yeah.
So thinking from that perspective, and I froze. It wasn't until, I mean, instinctively, like, I did pull myself out of and get myself out of that unsafe situation by leaving. But after still engaging in 10 minutes of conversation with this guy who was very unsafe for me, but I was frozen in that moment because that's what you do. That's what your response is when you're in an unsafe situation. So knowing something like martial arts or something, I don't know how pragmatic that really is, because sometimes you do get frozen in an unsafe situation, right?
Let me advocate. This is wonderful that we are having a reasonable conversation. See what happens when we talk? Dekho, when I say martial arts, I don't mean ineffective martial arts, उनके मैं नाम नहीं लूँगा, अल्लाह मुझे माफ करे, but I mean something very effective like jiu-jitsu, like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? Brazilian jiu-jitsu में competency. How did I freeze there? Competency आती है after like 3-4 साल. So 3 to 4 years, you change your mannerisms, you change how you react to these situations. You have developed muscle memory, you develop protocols for these situations where you're like, okay, khudda na khasta, if I need to disable this person who's heavier, bigger, stronger than me, I can. Right? So something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in a weapon-friendly country like Pakistan, something like owning a small firearm. What are you going to do, yaar? Well, the thing is, and this other person was making this argument, she's like, we need societal change.
Yeah, we do.
And absolutely
but
do.
that's not going to come
It's not gonna
for
come.
years.
For years. And when it comes, it'll come at the cost of too many lives. One life is too many lives. But it'll come at the cost of too many of these incidents. That's my argument. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's why
I think both can happen at the same time, right? They like you can still like
तो फिर उन्होंने मुझे ऐसा क्यों बोला? मुझे नहीं बोलना चाहिए था. मुझे नहीं बोलना चाहिए था.
But I think the probably her I've seen a little bit of that podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.
I haven't seen all of it, so I don't know exactly what the argument was. But perhaps what she was trying to say is that when incidents like these happen, the onus again becomes on women to fight and take care of themselves and fight these injustices and empower themselves with these things, rather than the conversation being how can we really change those systems and how can we bring about societal change. Yes, we need more women, and we probably need all women to at this point to be even very, very young girls to be equipped with self-defense. Yes. But why does the conversation become about that when incidents like these happen, rather than the conversation? And maybe that's the argument that she was trying to make. I don't know if it was, but my argument would be that why does the conversation always become about how can women protect themselves rather than what can men change, right? Or what is it that we as a society need to do to change and to bring about that change? Because because if we talk about that, if we have that conversation, then the onus comes on the men and also the women who are reinforcing those patriarchal beliefs and systems and misogyny and all of that. And then you have to do all of that work, right? So then to not do all of that work, then the conversation starts becoming about, oh, let's equip our women with all these tools and all of that.
And I accept that, right? यहाँ तक जब तक गुफ्तगू उनने जो ये बात बोली है आप जैसे frame करो, absolutely agreed. It shouldn't, the onus should never be on women for being women.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is essentially,
Yeah.
right? Having said that, again, the other one is a non-starter. That's my problem. The other one, societal change, at this point, unfortunately, not enough education, not enough awareness,
Yeah, but
is a non-starter.
unless you start.
You start.
Yeah.
You start, but you also start jujitsu classes.
I mean, yes.
That's it.
Sure. I mean, anybody can
Yeah.
benefit from these
Yes.
self-defense classes or whatever, men and women alike. Because
Yes.
as a man in Pakistan, I don't know how much safer you are than, I mean, very, very safe compared to women, but
Yeah.
you still could do with knowing self-defense.
When I have a
Or owning a small firearm
yeah.
if someone comes
Khuna
and
khasta,
wants
yeah.
to mug you. Yeah. Of course, not comparing what women go through at all.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I started jiu-jitsu when I was told that I could not do Muay Thai anymore because I had too much scarring on the
Okay.
side, just like really soft. So I started jiu-jitsu. I have a blue belt in it, or total that's nothing because purple, brown और black होते हैं, and ये the कोई 7 से 10 साल की जर्नी होती है to get to black belt. But I would feel much better because ego and all those things go out the window with stuff like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I would just be very calm when I was training jiu-jitsu. But that's a tangential side note. The conversation was,
Yeah.
so Saif Jito asked me, he's like, yeah, so what do you think the solution is? I'm like, yeah, dekho, in an ideal world, this is what I think. I think if we sat down, you remember that face-off that happened in Lahore Wali Aurat March? Where
Yes.
Where there were the ladies?
Where there were women and who were protesting, and then there were men who were throwing stones at them.
Yes, but there is this
Yeah.
iconic photograph
Yeah.
where the women, serene,
Yeah.
calm with the posters,
Yeah.
and these Dadi wale people losing their
Are we allowed to say
minds.
that on the
Dadi?
podcast?
I have a
Yeah.
Dadi. Losing their, and I'm a man, losing their minds, right? And I was like, ideally, I'd pick the one who's losing their minds the most.
Yeah.
And I'd pick the lady who's the calmest, and I'd put them in a room. I'd be like, have a conversation, and I will monitor with martial ability. I will monitor, no physical hanky-pankiness. Just talk to each other,
Yeah.
right? And he said something very interesting. He's like, yeah, dekho, for that, what's the first thing you require for that conversation? I'm like, I don't know, words. He's like, no, acknowledgement. These people think that these women should not even exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? I'm like, yeah. वैसे में फिर martial ability, फिर jiu-jitsu and firearms training. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
there's nothing else. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. Listen, and I've been wrong all my life, right? So I'm not saying I'm right about this. I'm just saying I don't see the other one happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think the solution is the most effective solution is probably the most long-term one. It's going to take years for that
Yeah.
change to come.
Yeah.
And I think it's about time that we actually start doing that, because self-defense classes and all of that, super important, and we should have that.
Yeah.
But that's something that's a conversation that happens every time that there's an incident like that, right?
Yeah.
But these conversations don't happen
No.
that need to. And it's about time that they start happening. Then
Ji-
it's about time that they start happening in all households,
Absolutely.
right?
200%,
And
yes,
हाँ, वो
inshallah,
नहीं
yeah.
होती, and that's where I think the change will start to come in.
Yes. I think, yeah, देखो, मेरा इस पे नुक्ता नज़र कुछ ऐसा है, being a man, like, I don't know how much this, I think the conversations need to move away from erroneous forms of arguments, right? So if I start saying things like, if I start launching ad hominem attacks, which is Latin for to the human, तो I start saying things like, आपके कपड़े green है, what would you know about this stuff? It's literally that nonsensical,
Yeah.
right? It's the same as saying, oh, your experiences and your personality do not lend to my worldview, तो मैं आपकी बात से disagree करती हूँ या करती हूँ या करता
Yeah.
हूँ. The thing is, we need to start taking arguments for their merits.
Yeah.
Right? There is merit in the argument that we need to start now talking about how unsafe women are.
Yeah.
Period.
Period.
No,
Yeah.
but she went out for a drive. period.
Doesn't matter.
Right?
Yeah.
Stop. Full stop.
Yeah.
Right? No, but like she wore jeans.
Yeah.
Listen to me, buddy. I said full stop. Like these conversations, they cannot go into these straw men. They cannot
Yeah.
go into these erroneous.
Yeah.
It's too late for
Yeah.
that. You know,
I mean, and it's time that it stops. And we're in almost in 2021.
Yeah, inshallah.
And we still have, yeah.
Yeah. Ho jaye khair se.
Yeah. With this year going, we
Allah Rahim
don't
kare.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, we're in 2020 and we still have these issues
Yes.
in our country where we're still talking about what a woman was wearing or where she was driving
Yeah.
or
How she
who
looked at
she
me.
yeah, I mean these are conversations that should, like you're saying, stop happening.
Yeah.
You know, and we need to start having better conversations.
Just need to start having better conversations. We need to have better facilities. We need to have better nomenclature, and we need to have better judicial like systems. And the thing is,
I mean, there's layers and layers
Yes,
and layers
yes,
of
yes,
things
yes.
that need to change for any change to
Sophie said,
really
yeah.
come about, right?
Yeah, but
And
yeah, the first thing obviously is I would argue is what you're doing is educating the parents. Ki bhai, listen to me. All of this is affecting your kid.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just be like, you know.
Huh.
For instance, the best thing I've heard is I treat my son and my daughter the same. That's a problem.
That's
They're
a
not the
problem.
same.
They're not the same.
They're not the same.
No, the thing is that they don't, again, that point that he made, Seth made, about not even acknowledging that there is a problem.
Right.
People say that they treat their sons and their daughters the same, but you're not even acknowledging that there's a collective unconscious, there's a bias that we carry through generations and generations where we have this idea that sons should be treated differently and daughters should be treated differently. And if you're not even acknowledging that aapka wo bias kahin na kahin aa raha hoga, you're not actually treating your sons and your daughters in the same way.
No.
That's my opinion.
And even if you are completely unbiased, आप ऐसे होते हैं. There's legendary people everywhere. जबरदस्त है माशाल्लाह से.
Yeah.
वो आपके son और daughter जो है, अल्लाह मियां उनको हयाती दे और कामयाब करे, they're still going to go out into the muashra. Muashra is tilted.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
even if you treated them the same and that was good, the muashra is tilted.
Yeah.
And that's problematic. उसमें भी मैं थोड़ा extreme हूँ इन चीज़ों के बारे में. मैं बोलता हूँ कि if you have a son and a daughter, you should not treat them equally. The daughter you should set up, if you have money or means or whatever, you should absolutely establish ways of making her financially independent. But see, therein lies another problem. Generally, हमारे मुआशरे में parents like to control their kids through financial
Financial means.
Financial means. तो वो तो बेटों के लिए भी नहीं होता, तो वो बेटियों के लिए कैसे होगा? But my thing is कि because I think, you know, generally it'll, like, your sons should be left to figure it out. Like, help them.
But I don't know if I agree with that.
What do you mean?
Like, I think what you're saying is that they should make more of an active effort to make their daughters more financially independent, but not give the same support to their sons.
I'm saying it's not like if there are limited resources, which there are, and if we're going to live in Pakistan, which we are living in Pakistan, this is not an ideal world. I'm talking about Pakistan, right? My argument is equip your daughter with what she's going to need, which is unfortunately more than your son.
I guess I would agree to the extent that women, when, you know, girls and when they grow up to be women, they will face more barriers than men will.
Right?
The men probably have it easier than women do, and perhaps there are more resources that need to be spent on making the woman more more equipped or more, you know, ready for the world, or more have enough resources to be able to actually, just enough resources to be actually able to do what she needs to when she goes out in society, right? Because she will have more barriers to cross.
Actually, my position is a little more extreme. हाँ, ऐसा तो है. यहाँ तक तो है बिल्कुल. यहाँ तक we are in agreement. मेरी position थोड़ी ज़्यादा extreme है, in that I feel कि you should empower your daughter or your sister or your mom, even if you need to, enough financially कि if she chooses to avoid society, she can. Not saying society shouldn't be fixed, not
Yeah.
saying jujitsu or all of that.
Yeah, but if she needs to
Yeah.
do away with society,
Yeah.
she can.
She should
I
be
think
able
so,
to.
yeah.
She should be able to. कि भाई देखिए,
Yeah, but I
मुझे-
think it's not just financial that comes into play here, though, right?
कैसे
There's a
मतलब?
lot of beliefs that women are brought up with
जी हाँ,
that
बिल्कुल.
need to then you need to bring up your daughters in a way that she has the emotional capacity and the emotional strength to actually do away with society if she needs to, right? Because
without saying, yes. Yes,
I
yes,
think
yes.
more than financial, yes, there is that.
Yes.
But more than that, you also need to raise your daughters in a way that they have that emotional strength
Yes.
to say कि whatever log kya kahenge,
Yeah.
keep that to one side.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I need
I'll
to-
do what
yeah.
I need to do,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
because if women don't have that, if they don't have that emotional support, you do what you need to do and don't care about society, even if she has all the financial resources, she's still limited because she's been brought up with the idea that I need to be within the confines of society,
Yes,
and
yes,
I
yes.
don't have enough emotional strength. Because when you banish society or when you try to break free from society, it takes immense amounts of courage and emotional strength to be able to do that.
अच्छा मैं जो है ना यहाँ तक भी नहीं सजेस्ट कर रहा हूँ कि आप बैनिश करो या nothing like that. I'm just saying
Just, or not even banish,
Yeah.
but just do something a little bit different to what
Yes.
society expects
Yes.
you to do,
Yes,
right?
yes,
But even to do that, you need a lot of strength because अगर society ने
Unfortunately, yes,
आपको
yeah.
एक barrier, आपको एक limitation दी हुई है,
हाँ,
ठीक है?
अभी शादी होनी है, अभी
Yeah,
बच्चे पैदा
exactly.
करने हैं,
If you
हाँ.
want to do something beyond that, no matter how many financial resources you have, if your parents have brought you up to in a way that you need to stick to those boundaries, or for whatever reason you have these ideas that you want to go beyond those boundaries of society, but you don't have the emotional support from them, then no matter how much financial resources you have, it's very, very difficult to
Yeah.
actually break those bounds. Do you
हाँ,
get what
those
I'm
are fees said,
understanding?
absolutely. Yeah. Understood. But yeah, but my argument is this, and it's obviously nonsensical at this point. But my thing is, because it's so skewed against women anyways, right? I think every female that I can, in my personal capacity, or anyone can, men or women, by the way, anyone, we should be empowered to then also turn their kind of back towards society if they need to. Like, they should be comfortable enough, मैं ये बोल रहा हूँ कि they should be comfortable enough कि they shouldn't have to expose themselves to the horrors that Pakistani society has to offer
Yeah.
for women.
So, for example, if a woman wants to move abroad, for example, let's say she
Yeah.
has the financial means to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That, or even stay here and, live her life, social, everything.
But see, the thing is, if a woman really lives here and she has all the financial resources, it's still a society that she's living in that discriminates against women significantly.
Yeah,
so
देखो-
it's so much more difficult,
Yeah.
even if you have the financial resources but not the emotional strength
Sure.
for it.
अच्छा, I mean,
Personal experience से बात करते
जी,
हैं.
बिल्कुल. And I want to give a disclaimer here. I am
Yeah.
absolutely not a feminist. I'm not, right?
अच्छा.
Not in the contemporary sense.
Okay.
Traditional sense में I am. Not in the contemporary sense जो आजकल है. I am...
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can talk about it's no problem. We can talk about it. And I'm absolutely not here for a lot of the nonsensical arguments that some of the empowered women make.
Okay.
Right?
Like what?
अभी ज़ाहिर है कुछ भी नहीं
Okay.
आएगा off the top of my head आपने से पूछते हैं मेरे से, right? But I'm just talking about what's actually happening, right? There is prejudice against women. This is not me pandering to females or males. This is just these are facts now, right? And for the longest time, I tried to deny it. I grew up in toxic masculinity. I inculcated all of those beliefs into how I grew up, right? वो जो मैं आपको बोल रहा हूँ ये मजाक नहीं कर रहा हूँ. For like till 25, 26 रोना तो मतलब एक बहुत गलत चीज थी. अब मैं जो है बड़ा सेट होकर रोता हूँ बकायदा.
That's good.
हाँ यार.
Get in touch with your feelings.
Yeah, absolutely, it's very necessary. Or especially if you show me a baby in a movie, oh my god, it just destroys me. उस baby के साथ कोई मसला भी नहीं होता है. Just a baby.
Just a baby?
Just show me a baby.
Okay.
Show me a
So you
kid.
probably shouldn't be on my Instagram because I put up a lot of pictures
Yeah,
of
मैं
babies.
बस double click करता हूँ like आगे set out because मुझे क्या नजर आता है, I'm like two things. One, we're all shit, so we're here because they're here, because of their innocence. अल्लाह ने हमारे पर करम किया हुआ है, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह. आखिर में करम अल्लाह का है, लेकिन they're innocent, they are future, and think about how pure that baby. I'll start crying right now. Think about how pure that baby is right now. And the society wants to ruin something that's that pure. Someone that's a person, male or female. So I get very worked up. So I'm just getting old. I don't know what it is. Lekin
It's all that philosophy you studied back in A levels and undergrad.
Undergrad. And then uske baad dusra masla ye tha, I studied diasporic literature and post-colonial literature. The post-colonial literature is a lot of powerful stories told by people who just got out of colonization, right? Or even now technically, lekin matlab with those veins, with those histories. But coming back to this, I am absolutely not pandering to men or women. मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ, right? I'm just saying ये मसला है. For instance, when we came back, I lived in Canada for a good 7 years, right? और ज़ाहिर जज्बा जाग जाता है कि वापस घर चलना है और वो हमारी मिट्टी है और वो मेरे लोग हैं. है बिल्कुल है. You and I feel it, right? Came back. My mom got a little sick. Allah may unko shifa de inshallah. We took her to a very, very reputed clinic. Not going to name them. Very reputed clinic, right? The one that's the best. I'm kidding. It was AKU. Yaar, matlab kya hai? Maan lo mere se kya hai? It wasn't any fault of the hospitals or the clinics, right? Just the way they would queue up, just the way they would line up, right? It'd be all men and they'd be huddled together. There was no line. Aurat kya kare ab? Ab mujhe batao, right?
Yeah.
So I turned to my sister and I said, I was like, yeah, it's a crime being a woman. It's a crime if a woman gets sick in this. Like, it's her fault for getting sick in this country. That's just fact, yeah. I don't have to be a feminist or whatever to see. These are facts. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you think? आप कौन सा personal वाले को बता रही थी? आप तो जरूर सोचते हैं कि ये मुआशरा ठीक है, मतलब.
हाँ, I think it's the perfect place to be a woman, especially a working feminist woman.
और वो जो गाड़ी भी खुद चला रही है.
Exactly. I'm the ideal woman to be in Pakistan.
Absolutely.
And
Yes, one would hope eventually, inshallah.
yeah. But I do disagree that you don't have to call yourself a feminist. I mean,
you think I should? I need to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, why? I mean, we're going completely off topic from my expertise
What topics are they?
of mental health.
Yeah.
But I mean, why is that word so bad?
It's not bad.
So why, if you believe that men and women should have access to equal resources and
Yes.
should have equal kind of lives,
Yes, inshallah. Yeah, absolutely.
then you're a feminist.
That's the
by
tradition.
definition.
That's
Yeah.
exactly.
So
That's
then why? I mean, extremists तो हर जगह आते हैं ना. इस्लाम में भी extremists होते हैं,
बिल्कुल है.
government में भी extremists
जी, बिल्कुल
होते हैं,
है.
ठीक है? So
जी.
you can't. That's the essence of feminism. Why call that word bad?
I'm not calling it bad.
Or not want to embrace it.
So I'm embracing it as far
Okay.
as the technical sense of it, right?
Okay.
Technically speaking,
Yeah.
absolutely a feminist,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Whatever I need to do to prove it, absolutely there, right?
पर्चे पे लग के
नहीं,
दिखाओ.
नहीं, आप जो है वो अगर pink shirt नहीं
stamped
पहनी तो
letter
नहीं है.
पे.
All the stereotypes, right? The colloquial meaning or whatever is associated with feminism, there are some arguments जो अभी तक नहीं आई हैं दिमाग में, तब से अब तक नहीं आई हैं, that I find problematic,
Okay.
right? Some of the way they talk, some of the reasonings they give, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Yeah,
Light bulb moment.
Yeah, light bulb. Aurat March, wonderful movement, brilliant. Just
Yeah.
so powerful and so strong, mashallah se. Goosebumps every time, right? Allah sabko apne मान में रखे. They were having a speaking event or something, right? And they उसमें नीचे लिखा हुआ था कि no cisgendered speakers allowed.
Okay.
Right? No
Yeah.
cisgender speakers allowed. Enough is enough. Let's have a conversation.
No cisgendered people, as in
Me.
speakers, you, but
Me.
you're a cisgender man.
Yes.
No cisgender women allowed either?
Yeah, no speakers, cisgender
Okay.
speakers allowed, right? Now, here's the thing. I understand. I am all for the argument कि भाई, because cisgendered people have so many avenues anyways to talk,
Huh.
right? Here, that should not, they should not talk. But intrinsically, that's a problematic position. And that's again,
But I would understand if no cisgendered man was not allowed
why
to
would you
speak,
understand that?
because it's a platform where you're coming to talk about the discrimination that women face, and
Sure.
men have enough platforms, and especially cisgendered men have enough platforms to be able to air their views.
Sure, okay,
ठीक है?
okay.
It's time for women to talk about, or other women जो भी है आपके. So
जी.
my issue is with, if I had to pick an issue with that, my issue would be, why not allow cisgender women to not talk?
Oh, what a
as
surprise.
well?
Nahin. I'm kidding.
No, because it is Aurat March, and
It
you have
is.
other,
Yes.
other non-cisgendered people as
Yes,
well who
yes,
want
yes.
to talk, and you want to give them a platform, which is
yes.
all well and good, but it's also for women too,
But
right?
That is my position.
Yeah.
My position is that a lot of this stuff, or at least the colloquial understandings around it, have become dogmatic. Right?
But then उसमें word का तो या movement का तो कोई कसूर नहीं है ना?
हाईजैक हो जाती है ना मूवमेंट. कसूर नहीं है. कसूर
हाँ,
नहीं है.
but-
हाईजैक तो हो जाती है ना.
Hijack हो जाती है,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But then there's just so many different meanings to the word, right?
To feminism?
To feminism, right?
but-
Everyone
yeah.
has their own idea of it,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah.
in its essence, feminism still stands for what you believe in, right?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah.
But देखो,
It's same thing, right? Where celebrities are asked, "Oh, are you a feminist?" and they go like, "Oh no, I'm not a feminist because that word is so."
or they say the
or
opposite.
वो,
They also देखो,
why use the F word, or we don't we don't agree with the F word, and it's just become, especially in the local context, if we talk about it, it's become such a tabooed word that we need to reclaim it, right?
Absolutely
It's
do.
not
Yeah, agreed.
it's not a bad word.
It's not. No.
It's actually a wonderful word.
It's
Yeah.
very basic necessity
Yeah.
that is what that word is. देखो, if I could have it ideally, and I only say this because मेरी ज़्यादातर जो पढ़ाई थी ना, अच्छा, मेरी ज़्यादातर जो पढ़ाई थी ना, वो थी linguistics में थे, semantics, linguistics, philosophy of language, and these things, right? I studied a lot of false dichotomies, a lot of rape myths. I studied those things, right? And so, if we were to use feminism interchangeably with equality or equity, that's wonderful. Equity, what we want is equity, not even
Yeah.
equality, right?
Right.
Equity meaning we
Giving the same resources
give everyone the resources that they would require,
they would require,
right?
Yeah,
So equality of opportunity
Yeah.
is equity.
yeah,
It's not equality, because equality is you and I aren't the same height, right? फर्ज करें एक दीवार है, आप और मैं खड़ी हुए हैं, right? I'm taller than you,
Yeah.
right? That's
yeah.
not your
That's
fault.
not, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So equity would be you get a stool, so we can both look over the wall.
Yeah.
That's equity.
Yeah, exactly.
And we want equality of opportunity. And I would love it if feminism was interchangeable with equity, because that's what I understand it to be. However, all of the charge that's been given to it, all these nonsensical arguments, which मतलब अभी तक एक ही याद आई है, because I know I feel strongly about this, and the thing is, again, इस पे भी if you dismiss me, हाँ तुम cisgendered आदमी हो, तुम्हें और क्या समझ आएगा?
I
That's a
don't think
problem.
it's about कि तुम cisgendered आदमी हो तो तुम्हें क्या समझ आएगा. I think it's more about not mansplaining the issue, basically, right? It's about
Can't, yeah.
women having the platform to talk about their experiences.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? I think that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as
So I don't think there's anything wrong with not having cisgendered men as
yeah,
speakers.
as a
in
practice,
especially in a local context where women just don't have opportunities to air out their grievances. साल में एक दिन आता है जब वो मार्च पे जाती हैं.
Sure,
ठीक है?
sure.
So उसमें भी आप अगर
नहीं,
आदमी को include कर दो
no, it
तो
wasn't a march. It was an event.
हाँ जो भी event या जो भी.
And you're right. I will give you this, right? Or मैं कौन होता हूँ देने वाला? This is objectively right.
Yeah.
But my problem intrinsically would be with that argument. कि You
Okay.
don't get to speak because of who you are. But what about the merits and demerits of your argument? Because that's what we need to do, right?
Sure.
Like our arguments need to stand the battery of tests.
Sure,
right?
but the thing is that there's a woman,
Yes.
there's a man.
Yes.
ठीक है.
Yes.
दोनों के arguments merit पे
हाँ.
ठीक है.
हाँ.
अब issue क्या होता है in our local context? If the woman is saying the same thing and the man is saying the same thing, they both have merits to their arguments. It's the man's voice that's really appreciated or is taken, you know, uska word trustworthy ज़्यादा होता है rather than a woman's. Right? So
Okay,
if you
okay,
if
yeah,
in a
yeah,
platform say where women are talking about
Yes.
their issues,
Yes.
आप वही बात एक औरत कर रही होगी और वही बात एक मर्द कर रहा होगा, मर्द की बात को वाह 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 किया जाएगा, औरत की बात को नहीं किया जाएगा क्योंकि वो एक औरत के मुंह से निकल रही होगी.
Where I accept that's a problem, we could correct for that problem. You know, but
Yeah,
like,
but why is the onus on women and,
No,
and
no, no,
these,
no.
you know, these
Not on women.
or in these, you know, events कि आप men's arguments are still, you know, उनकी arguments तो वैसे भी सुनी जाती हैं ना.
नहीं, ये वाली नहीं सुनी जाती है ना. जो बात मैं कर रहा हूँ, ये थोड़ी कोई सुनेगा कि भाई नहीं, ये आप चाहते हैं कि औरतों को क्या? काजी दिमाग खराब हो गया, start करो इसको. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that conversation or that space is the only place where that conversation is going to take place. That conversation, right? Because yes, cisgendered men get to talk their hearts out wherever else, but they can't espouse these values. They can't espouse these
Can
views.
they not?
No. No.
Really?
Because आप देखो ना, if you're going to argue कि patriarchal society है, which it is, misogyny is rampant, which it is,
Yeah.
right? Rape culture absolutely है,
Yeah.
right? तो जब वो cultures ही वैसे हैं, and a man gets up and is like कि ये सब गलत है और ये, you know, like we should treat it better, or we should make it better, we should fix it or you know,
Yeah.
sort it out, वो side पे कर दिया जाता है.
Yeah.
You know, so for
Sure.
that conversation,
Yeah.
That's
But
the space.
again, okay, I understand your point.
Yes.
I absolutely do. But again,
'Cause I'm a man. Right.
bringing it back to that event.
Yes.
ठीक है?
Yes.
If they have speakers
Yes.
who can say the same thing
Yes.
as a cisgendered man,
Yes.
ठीक है?
Yes.
So why would you not pick a woman or a cisgendered man to say the same thing that the cisgendered man would?
Because
आपके arguments similar ही होंगे ना?
नहीं, see that assumption or presupposition, I am not comfortable with.
Okay.
That's my problem.
ठीक है.
That's exactly my
I
problem.
understand where you're
Yes,
coming from.
That's it.
ठीक है.
That's it.
सही.
It's not if they're saying the exact same thing, still why should there be prejudice on either side of इस पे here's the problem. I'm a man advocating equality or equity for men. When historically it has always been the opposite thing कि equity जो होती है वो औरतों को deny की गई है. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so that's a problem that I'm arguing for this. But मेरा सिर्फ इतना है, नुक्ता नज़र मेरा ये है कि let's have that conversation in that space, but let's have it with no holds barred and no prejudices. Because you're not. Here's what I feel: कि women are not asking for this society back. They're asking for a better society.
They're asking for a better society.
Right?
Yeah, because we
Yeah.
don't want
No.
we don't want the society that is right now
Yeah.
because it's a society that doesn't work for us.
It doesn't work for anyone actually. Yeah.
So we just want a better society.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we do.
So I would argue, or मेरी argument at least ये है.
ठीक है.
Again, right? As a man, and देखो, I'm also cognizant of my other privileges, which is being a Sindhi in Sindh, being Sunni, right? All these, I understand all this, right? But my argument is simply this: have that conversation in its full flavor and in all its various facets. Don't succumb to identity politics. Do not succumb to languages that you import from abroad. वो यहाँ के लिए नहीं है. Right?
Yeah.
So even stuff like mansplaining and all those things, don't hurl that as an insult. Don't hurl that as an attack on me. Try to understand what mansplaining actually is, because the most basic form of mansplaining is, Areej, आप चुप हो जाओ, मैं बताता हूँ.
हाँ.
It's usually a lot more insidious than that. ऐसे नहीं होगा, कोई dramatic show नहीं होगा, पर्दा गिरेगा, ये mansplaining है. It's usually
Of
a
course
lot
not.
more insidious than that,
Yeah.
right? It's usually in the nooks and crannies and crevices of life where
Yeah.
it's just scarier. Yeah, like I mean, for instance, ठीक है, it's a group of friends, right?
Yeah.
कुछ मर्द हैं, कुछ खवातीन हैं बैठी हुई हैं, क्या करें, शीशा तो नहीं पी सकते, रेड बुल पी रहे हैं, राइट, एंड we're just enjoying, शीशा तो नहीं पी सकते, we're
अब
just
नहीं पी सकते।
नहीं, we're just all enjoying ourselves, whatever, right, and you get to say something, and I'm like, I'm actually being toxic towards you, speaking over you, being physically aggressive. That's mansplaining, right?
Yeah.
That is, I would argue, the most mediocre or minor form of it.
Yeah.
What's more insidious, you go to a doctor who's a male, right, and you're in pain. Now that becomes way worse, right?
Yeah.
And that mansplaining is what you need to get to.
Yeah.
अगर आप ये बोलते रहोगे ना कि वही वाली बात है ना, if you keep trivializing it like this.
But it's not just because someone is going through something less severe than that doctor example doesn't mean it's invalid.
Absolutely
though, right?
Not.
Because
Absolutely
every person, but I'm privileged,
yes,
right? As a Pakistani woman who's a Sunni, and I come from a Maiman family, so financially educated, better off than a lot of other women.
Yes,
so I am privileged, but there are still a lot of problems that I go through as a woman in Pakistan. Doesn't mean that, and there's so many other women who don't have the same privileges as me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Doesn't mean that मेरी जो चीजें हैं वो कम है, right? The discrimination, अगर हम इसी comparison में रह जाएंगे, तो फिर तो हम किसी की भी difficulty या किसी के भी बुरे experience को validate ही नहीं कर सकते.
200% agreed, right?
ठीक है?
My problem is...
So why should we, if mansplaining can be, that as well as that, the two examples that you gave, why can't they both be used in the same instances?
Absolutely can be. See, both of those are mansplaining, right?
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is the use of mansplaining where it trivializes that concept, where you use it improperly.
Yeah.
If you and I are disagreeing...
आप किसी के बारे में बोल सकते हो,
किसी भी वर्ड और मैं किसी भी वर्ड के बारे में ही बोल रहा हूँ, फेमिनिज्म के बारे में भी ये बोल रहा हूँ, और मैं chauvinism के बारे में भी यही बोल रहा हूँ, right? If you and I have a conversation, and I am just better prepared for whatever subject matter.
Like today?
Absolutely
Was this an ambush?
No,
you told me we'll talk about mental health, and then you went off all
No, absolutely not. You're just smarter, mashallah say, and you are... I think this is a conversation, right?
No, of course. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So, lekin, now you made me lose my train of
Sorry.
thought. No, it's okay.
We were talking about chauvinism and the...
No, but yeah. So, chauvinism ho gayi, wo ho gaya, jo bhi ho gaya. If you use these words incorrectly, they lose their bite.
Sure.
And my argument is they should not lose their bite.
No, of course not.
Feminism shouldn't. Mansplaining shouldn't. Because aap dekho na, if you and I are having a conversation, right, and I, for whatever reason, seem to be having more success with my argument, you can't be like, because I don't understand the reasons for why he is better on this day, patriarchy, misogyny, that trivializes those things.
Of course, but that doesn't mean कि वो चीजें हैं नहीं.
नहीं, बिल्कुल है
ना.
But point it out ना. Yeah, point it out कि कहाँ हो रही है और कैसे हो रही है.
पर वो तो फिर कोई भी किसी चीज को भी mislabel कर सकता है ना. वो तो that is something that we can't just... उस चीज को हम हर चीज को तो एड्रेस नहीं कर सकते ना. नहीं कर सकते. I mean, people who are actually working towards women empowerment and all of that, if they're the ones that are using the terms correctly,
and they are,
and they are, right? That's what matters the most, right? Because किसी भी आप society में चले जाओ, किसी भी country में चले जाओ, किसी भी field में चले जाओ, there will be people who will misuse words and who will perhaps use them or trivialize them, but we can't just become so focused on that, because then we're straying away from the more important things.
The problem, you're right. Again, you're right. The nuances is where all change happens, right? Again, मेरा जो मसला होता है ना, वो इसी चीज पे होता है कि colloquialisms is what gets passed around.
Sure.
So you
need... I see your point.
You need colloquialisms to be like, feminism is not a gali.
Yeah.
There's another F word which you're not supposed to use. That's not this one. I use it all the time.
Just not on the podcast.
I do it. Fuck it. I'll do it all the time. But that's not the F word. Feminism isn't the F word. Mansplaining is absolutely a thing. Patriarchy is a thing. Misogyny is absolutely a thing. And you need to also you need to approach these things with an open mind, because you don't know how these things manifest.
So like, for example, like you're a person who says कि I prescribe by the traditional meaning of feminism. So then individual level पे आप उस पे आ जाते हो ना, where if you are seeing that word get mislabeled or misused, then you call it out.
Yes.
Right? And that's the most that you can do when things are going that way,
that's
right?
all you can do.
That's all you can do, because आप हर किसी का तो मुंह नहीं shut करा सकते. And there are, I mean, there was a clip with Ifat Umar and Noman Ijaz where she said, oh, Me Too movement is so close to my heart. And then they went on a rant about how Me Too is, I think Noman Ijaz was gay, or Me Too, to ye sab deen se duri ki whatever hai, iska reason hai, and all of that. You should look it up. It's a pretty funny clip, and Ali Kulpeer does a brilliant job with his TikTok dubbing of it.
Yeah, he does do that. Yes,
he does a brilliant job of it. But yahi hai na कि there will be people, जैसे Me Too movement को, she was like, oh, it's so close to my heart. But then, going into these conversations and agreeing with whatever this guy was saying about it being Islam.
How is she going to do anything else, right? Yeah.
But she's the host of this show. She can call him out if this is something.
That's misogyny. She can.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying. कि आप हर किसी का मुंह नहीं shut करा सकते. People have their own ideas of things, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But if you feel so strongly about something, rather than just saying I don't prescribe to this, which is what you're saying, you call it out.
Yeah.
Rather than doing that, I don't prescribe, I don't really take the label on of feminism because it's been misused or mislabeled. मैं इसलिए जो ना इस word को embrace नहीं करता. Rather than doing that, you do कि यार, if you're using the word incorrectly, I'll call you out on it. This is what feminism is, not what you think it is.
अच्छा यार देखो आप बिल्कुल सही बोल रहे हो. I should absolutely do that. The onus is on me, right? My problem with that is the minute I'm like यार देखो actually एक antagonism आ जाता है. So I try to, because the thing is, if there's antagonistic energy between you and me, we're not going to learn anything from each other. And that's why I avoid it most times. But you are right. That wasn't here. And I suppose I've just been generally cornered into this thing कि यार नहीं feminist तो मैं नहीं हूँ. Also because I find that label kind of limiting. I do.
Okay.
That I do.
Why?
Because of the colloquial definition.
Okay. So then you call it out rather than say I don't embrace this word, right?
मतलब कोई 3 page की मैं वो दूंगा भाई देखिए I am a feminist but not in the colloquial sense.
But why do you need to justify it to other people? It is what you believe, right?
I do, but it's also about establishing yourself for what you stand for, right? Because that's important. Because Areej Jaffrani is not just Areej Jaffrani who has personal opinions. She has scientifically backed, evidenced claims about child psychotherapy. It's not the same thing as... you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I suppose that's why. But other than that, feminism is not the F word.
Yeah.
you want to... and I suppose we should end with that. I think that's as powerful as anything to end it with.
I agree.
Again, plug whatever you need to plug. Schools, everything. अभी तक जिसने भी सुना होगा वो
school, well, I'm not here to represent the school, so I don't know if it's okay for me to share, but I'll just share their name because they're doing brilliant work. So I work at Bayview High School, which is not the same as Bayview Academy.
It's not.
It's not. It's a different school.
I know this.
So we have a well-being department and we're doing some brilliant work. We did a mental health day event and we did some really, really good talks with 9 other schools. So if you go on our page, we've got lots and lots of talks on it and lots of some really important topics like body image and children's safety within schools and stuff like that. So if anybody wants to go check that out, that's really cool. If you want to go check it out. And my own personal private clinic that I run is called Rumus Counseling Pakistan. I've got an Instagram page where I blog. So,
which I will plug into my Instagram or whatever, and we'll share that. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kazi.
Thank you so much for coming on. I think, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank
you.
Like
people aren't doing it, and we absolutely must. And I would love to have you on again whenever you have time, inshallah.
Absolutely.
Right?
I'd love to come back.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Areej Jaffrani, Kazi Akbar. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay.